Okay, we're over here at the Bridgeport, and we're off to the side of the table here because we're setting up, marking, and drilling the holes that mount this two components that go on here. And one is, we're just going to assemble this again. We've shown this numerous times over the last year and a half. That's about how long this job has been in here. It's a little shameful, but it is what it is. Alright, but we are getting her done. Alright, so these two screws come into here, and they're not tightened all the way down so that these things can move. These two nuts go on here to lock it down, and that's what locks those from moving and lets this be freedom. Now this is a taper. This is a taper cone that tightens up this back gear from being just direct drive with the spline. When this is engaged, you're direct line with the spline, and when you want to go through back gear, you loosen this up so that you'll transmit through the gear train of back gear. And it has a wedge draw on it. And when it draws down, it spreads those, and that's what tightens it up into the cone for direct drive. And then when you loosen this up, then it can go around through the drive train. This is just a spacer here, and then your nut goes on there like that. Your two keeper nuts there. Okay. Putting this whole pattern in here, what we did is we went ahead and set it up over here with a mandrel guiding it in and a gear meshing in to time the two sets of gear teeth, because we wanted to see if this was a uniform hole pattern with the gear flipped, and whether it's timed with the gears and flipping, whether this one here is exactly center of this rotation. And I mean, theoretically, that's what this should be. Is that should be pivoting here, and this should be expanding it, and this should all be running perfectly true with the axis of the shaft itself. All right. So, in doing so, let me pull all this apart here. I started out by putting this one gear on top of this gear here that has its holes in it already. Alright, so I put that on top of the gear just like I did right here, right now. So say that gear is just like this one here, and I had a spare gear coming in, and I have it spaced up off the table so it meshes with the bottom one and the top one. And then I took a clamp, and then I took my favorite hammer, and I went ahead and lightly transfer punched in that hole. Lightly transfer punched in that hole there. Then I went ahead and loosened it up, pulled out my 1.25 inch arbor, pull off my clamp, and then I flipped over that gear onto here and lined it up as best I could, put it back in here, lined it up, and I stared down through the upper hole, and I lightly tapped it, and I had 2 punch marks. Center to center was about 70 thousandths or so. And so I took and I transfer punched right between those 2 punches, right between them. And then I went ahead and I drilled this blank out, and I went ahead and I tapped it out. Okay, so I put this gear and timed it and put my guide in here, transfer punched it, flipped it over, timed it again, and my punch marks line up exactly. This lines up, these two line up. Alright, So now we're using this as a master, and I have transfer punched this one here, and I'm going to do the same with the other ones. And then what I did is, to confirm that that is the proper thing to do, is I've assembled that hardware onto here and then measured from the center overside the clutch with the pin in here holding it out like that, and I measured that diameter all the way around, and I came within a couple thousandths. Okay, this has a little play to absorb that amount, but it was so close to being dead on that this hole should be dead on, and this one here, it just happens to be slightly off to one side. And so instead of copying that slightly off, we believe that that's supposed to be dead nut center and equal to that, and it would make sense to have uniform changeable parts, two halves, shells, tapers, all of that, if this is exactly equal. So we're going to continue on, because we can transfer punch this all day long and get a nice repeatable holes. Now, after I punch this, I'm going to show you how I went through the steps to drill these in the mill. So let me finish marking all of these up, and then we'll get started on the drilling. Alright, so we laid it up there. We gave it a transfer punch in the through bolt, and then this is the tapped out holes here. We got to get that started over the whole thing. That's the key. Otherwise, we got to adjust that in and out all day long just to get that in there to hold it. And our last one. You become the expert on the last one. On almost any project. I guess that's where been there, done that comes in play, right? Alright. Alright. They're all transfer punched, alright? So let's set up our little drill here, and we'll get going on drilling all the holes out just like we did on this one here. Okay, I got a stubby little pre-drill in here. It's probably just a couple hundred thousandths in diameter. I just grabbed it out of one of the drawers there in my selection. And I'm freehanding this on top of this nice smooth slick surface of the jaws, and this is nice and smooth, and I can hold this down here like this, and this material is not super grabby, and this little drill bit I gave just a tiny little flat right at the edge of it there, so it wouldn't grab, and ever so slightly just come in and hit that good punch mark that I put in there. Not aggressively, just gently going down through it. There we go. And then I'm going to come around here, and this is the tapped holes. Best way I found to center up on a hole without actually taking a coaxial indicator and setting it up to a punch mark. And all right, I'll go ahead and go through and do them all to that size. Okay, we put in our drill bit for our clearance tool for the wedge bolt, and we slowed down our speed. And the same thing, we're just going to do a hand job on this. Nice little tiny chips, no grabbing, nice smooth round hole. And tight, meaning it's not drilling oversized, it's drilling a nice tight hole. And the last one. Okay, let's change it out. We'll put in our tap size, which is a letter F for 5/16 national course. That drill bit was warm, touched my wrist. All right. This is real close to the diameter there, so just taking it a little extra cautious just so it's not grabby, but we did the same thing. We put the little flats on it. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to put a little countersink in here. And we'll drop the speed down just a skosh. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and tap the two holes that will receive the bolts, the threaded bolts for the two clutch halves. Okay, we mounted our Inco tapping head, which we haven't used in a long time, but it was under the bench in there. We said this would be the perfect job for this because we want to hand tap these, but we want them to be tapped true in line. So that the hole is 90 degrees to the part face. Okay, because these halves, will shell in on this side right here. So that's why we're coming in on this side as well. Just this is the face that we want. We know that this is parallel, and but this sticks up here. And we're not going to use any cotton oil or fluid because this is ductile iron and it's self-lubricating on its own. So anyway, this is spring-loaded, so we just kind of like push it down and go ahead and just lightly get it, you know, we're holding it firm. And we just crank it on down. We feel that we're through the other side, okay? And we just kind of like free spin this back. And when it comes loose, it comes up out of the hole. Alright, we come down to the next one. Just push it down in there. It is kind of it's a handy tool to have around. Without the expense of any of the big high pneumatic straight tappers, automatic tappers, which are really cool items as well. But there's that one there. Okay, we'll go through and we'll do the other three here. And this is how we did the first one. And that's why we know that the holes that we used to transfer punch these holes into the other ones was just that much better than the original one once we clarified that we were equal whether we flip the gear over or not. Everything is symmetrical. Kind of nice when you know that you're a little closer than the original. Okay, next step, the lightning holes. Okay, we have set up our dividing head, or quick index, I should say, this is a quick index head, is what it is. It does divide, but it's limited. And it's quick because it does have a masking plate on the bottom. But I'm not going to be using none of those features at all. I'm just using it as a 3-jaw chuck mounted in the mill. And so we got a chuck wrench here. I've already moved my jaws inside because I want to be able to have this nice radius right here to where we can go ahead and grab a hold of the outside of the gear teeth here just to hold it gently while we create the lightning holes that are in the gear. Now every one of these gears has got 5 lightning holes in this side right here, and they're set to a certain depth, and we're going to duplicate that depth. We're going to probably be off a little bit on the point or the angle of the drill because we're not going to stick something down in there and really check that angle on there. But it's to compensate for this hardware that's on the gear itself. Alright, with that said, how are we going to locate and drill each one of these holes into our blanks? And we're going to take a 5/16 rod and we're going to run it through our 5/16 hole here, and this pin will come and interfere with one side of the jaw. And so that's how we're going to locate the rotation of this. And we leave this down just a little bit. We'll bring in our jaw to where we can just rotate it. We clock it until it touches the side of the jaw. And we just go ahead and we make sure if you put it down too far, it clocks on the bottom part of the jaw, and we want it to clock on the top part of the jaw here. There we go. Okay, so we held this in on top of there's 2 steps on the jaw, so I make sure that it's up against the top part of the jaw, and then I'm tightening it down, and it's nice and tight. So it's locating and registering, and I can duplicate that with each and every one of the blanks that we want to drill the holes. Now we're just going to start over here and we're going to go clockwise. So we take the drill bit, and this actually, this was a 23/64 drill bit. Okay, so we put that all the way up in there and we tighten it down. We put the spindle on neutral, and we came down and checked it 4-point with our flute here and gave it an eyeball side to side. And the drill bit is actually pretty straight. Sometimes you have a little bit of a bend in your drill bit and stuff like that. These run pretty. This is running pretty good, and I've zeroed in on that first hole already. And let me come down, because I came down to the bottom and then I set my travel dial on my spindle, and just making sure that I'm only going to go as deep as this one is drilled out here. And because I only want to remove the amount of material that they roughly removed off of here. Final balancing and everything else should be done with this gear mounted on the spindle and spun up or set up on a static balancer, and then it could be adjusted from there to be a little bit closer. But this should get it really close and in the ballpark. All right, so let's pull this gear out, and we're going to put the first blank in here. One of my hens just laid an egg. I can hear her out there. Okay, there we go. All right. They're roughly a 1/4 inch deep from where I touched that drill point to the top of that surface to where my zero mark is. Okay, right there. All right, I'm going to get the vacuum. Okay, and there we go. Okay, the first one's done. We set that off to the side. We're going through and we're going to do each and every one of them. There we go. We know that. And that snugs it up real nice. I like that. Okay, we'll bring you in when we get quite a bit farther on here. Okay, we're getting ready to dial in our last hole here, and we just come over first to eyeball it this way, and we eyeball it this way here, and then we get down there a little closer, and when we get down a little closer, we can actually see it somewhat kick to the side, and then we 180 it. We want to make sure that it's not kind of going the other direction. And then my light's better on one side than the other side here, so Okay, where's center? Okay, this is our last hole, and they have been all the same depth. As I came down at each one of those holes, I'm looking at, there we go, the depth of my dial caliper, or dial. With each one, I looked at the travel dial, making sure that they all bottomed out the same height, and they have. Okay, there's our first one. 4 more to go. And the last one. There we go. All right. The last thing is to broach the keyway. Okay, this is my little Drake arbor press. When I got this, all I had was a shaft going through here and the gear and the body. So I didn't have the handle. I didn't have a hand wheel over here, and I didn't have a ratchet on here. I had to make the ratchet itself, and I had to make the swivel table down here. Just duplicated what others have on them, and nothing special about it at all. I went ahead and I set up one gear on the other gear. I lined the original one up with the transfer punch for the center of the threaded holes, because these are perfectly in line. This is off slightly compared to the rest because it was off, not centered with the attachment. So we're just matched up here, and we got the key in here. We got 2 5/8 in here so it can offset my broach guide, so it lowers it down, and the shims that are only so long will actually get to go through and back up the broach for the bottom key underneath.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. All right, I got 2 5/8 tool bits to hold this center so that the cut, my backups for the pushing the broach, get behind the broach itself so they give in the full contact here. Right now, I have no support behind here, and I'm going to push it down through first. That's your first cut, and then we add a shim, bring it out, add a shim, bring it out, add a shim, bring it out, till we get to the full depth. All right, and just kind of eyeballing down through here, making sure that we're not hitting anything. There we go. Okay, there's our first pass. All right, we just wipe the excess little chips out of here so it's nice and clear. All right, we have three steps of shims here, and we have a thin one and 2 thick ones. And we find that we don't like to push these. That you break these, and then they want a lot of money to replace them, and I don't like giving them my money if I can help it. So what we do is we go ahead and we get that down in there, and we go ahead and we start making our second pass through here. And you don't want to lose anything. And I think this is going to be just a 2-push pass, because I was just watching it and it looked like it came out to the full depth of the original gear here. And we're going to go ahead and pull this, and we're just going to make sure by sighting down through there. No, we got one more pass we're going to have to make. And we'll put in the thicker. And leave out the thin one, because it is just a minute amount. Okay, we're going to sight through it again. Okay, that's full depth right there. All right, there we go. First keyway. Looks nice, both sides. This is the outward side. All right, we're going to go ahead and broach the other 4. Okay, we get down to our last one. We're getting pretty good at this. Of course. Okay, important call. Prue from Prue's Foundry. All right, so that was our first pass, and now we add in our thin shim. And we take out that shim, add in our next one here. And there we go. Pull out our keeper here. And our pin. There we go. Last one. Okay, we were getting a little carried away. Actually, I just went and opened up the package and took this back out because we got on the phone and we told Emery that we were all done with his gear. The old one is packed up in another separate box, and So his new gear with his hardware that's supposed to go on there, I've got it bolted up on here, and I'll get this wrapped up and I'm going to be putting it in there. While I was talking with Emery on the phone, we kind of squared away my thinking on this, and just wanted to pass on a couple of the particulars on this gear. First off, I thought it was out of a 9-inch South Bend, and it's not out of a 9-inch South Bend. This vintage of machine is actually a Clausing 100 series, and they made this series about 4 years, and it was 4 years of Clausing running the series before Atlas lathe took over the Clausing or merged with the Clausing. And this is a 12-inch lathe. All right, and this particular lathe was the last year that it was made, but I'm sure for that 4-year period they made this arrangement for the back gear the same, and then after Atlas took it over, then they changed it to a different engagement or something like that, from what Emery lets me know on the particulars. Okay, I have 4 gears right now. If you've seen this gear up close, and you see this area right in here, and you know what you have for a lathe, and you saw Emery's, he had broken off teeth, and it was tried to be brazed up and recut those teeth, and there was no success in that. Not that you can't have success doing that, but and instead of grooving his teeth out and going ahead and brazing it in, and myself coming in and cutting those teeth, I just decided to go ahead and make a new one, and then I decided to go ahead and make more, and I added 4 to this cut so that we had them sitting here, because this isn't the first one of these I've made, so I know that there's more out there. There is 4 readily available right now. All right, I'll be getting those up on my website, word of mouth going. I don't know if I'll get them up on eBay or anything else like that, but you can contact me through email, and I can send you an invoice, and we'll talk about price when you email me on the particulars. All right. I thanked him also very much for the patience that he's had in waiting around for me to get this done. And all right, I think this is the this is the last of anything that's been lingering around the shop for a long while. All right, till next time, get her done.